So let's get into it, guys, and spend the next half an hour and a half even on this. So before we go into the actual substance, there's quite a few new people here. So quick introduction from me. My name's Jake. I run a Zoho consultancy called Limitless IT Consultancy. I've been working in the Zoho world now for about 7 years, possibly a bit more now, actually. I started as a developer straight from university, went on in a previous consultancy to become project manager, overseeing all the projects there, and eventually, about 2 years ago, started my own consultancy. I'm CRM. I've got a CRM certification from Zoho. I'm also a Zoho developer, and we support clients from say 4 or 5 users all the way up to 100 plus. So a real range in what we look after. Actually, yesterday I was on site with a client, and actually that client I realised I'd been working with since 2019. So one of my longest running clients, and it's fascinating to see how they've gone from being a much smaller bunch of users to a much bigger bunch of users, and actually how that interacts, how they're using the system, and things like that. So I've been doing it quite a while, so certainly know my way around reporting, but I'm sure you guys will challenge me with some questions today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this all within a test CRM. Now, this did create a little bit of a challenge. One of the issues with a test CRM is people aren't using it on a regular basis. So usually we don't have much data in it. So one of the reasons it took quite a long time to actually do this webinar, because I spoke about it initially almost 2 months ago, is we had to write a bit of an automation that was going to fake somebody using the CRM. So we actually had data to be able to report on. So that is exactly what we've done. So our test CRM is full of fake leads, fake contacts, fake accounts, and fake deals, along with fake notes and fake tasks and things like that. So all of the data you see today is being created with a random data generator. None of it is real data, but it's to give you an idea of how you can use this data in your reporting. It also means some of the reports we're going to do today are going to look a little bit odd and probably not like a real CRM, purely because of the fact that we're using this as sort of fake data here. So one of the things, for example, is when we start looking at deal owner, you'll notice that I am the deal owner for absolutely everything, and our one other user has nothing at all. Obviously, in our normal Zoho CRM, you wouldn't have that. It's purely a sort of part of this being a test system. The other thing that's worth knowing is that we are doing this using the new Zoho CRM UI. If you haven't yet switched to the new UI, we've got a separate webinar for that. I'll include a comment and a link to that at the end of this so you can find it. But we're going to do all of this in the new UI because ultimately going forward, this is where everyone will be anyway. So we want to make it as easy as possible. So to get to our reporting and dashboards, on the sidebar here, we obviously have our main modules. This is where we can click into our leads module, click into our deals module, etc. We then have our reports module, which I'm going to open in a new tab. And these are our kind of more traditional Excel type based pivot table reports. And we then have our analytics. Our analytics are our kind of fancier, glossier looking type reporting. And that's where we're going to spend most of our time today. If we do get time at the end, I do want to get into some of the reporting stuff as well, because there's some really powerful stuff within the reports module that you can't do within the analytics module. But just in terms of time, we're going to spend most of our time today focused on dashboards because it gives us a lot more that we can do. It's also worth noting at this point, you'll notice I'm going to switch between two terminologies here, dashboards and analytics. Depending on when you signed up to the CRM, you may well see the word analytics instead of the word dashboards. Basically, Zoho changed at some point in time between the two terminologies. So based on how long you've been using Zoho will depend on which version of it you see. The other thing we're not talking about today, just so we can get this all out in the clear, is Zoho Analytics. So Zoho Analytics is a separate application. Some of you may well be using Zoho Analytics. It is an ultra powerful Power BI style reporting tool. And actually, we do a lot of work in Zoho Analytics for a lot of our clients, but it's kind of the next level from what we can do within CRM. So CRM analytics and dashboards is all data that's within your Zoho CRM ecosystem. Zoho Analytics allows us to take data from other places and bring it into our reporting. So it's kind of the next level on Zoho CRM. But we're going to start with CRM today. Potentially down the line, we'll do a future webinar on Zoho Analytics. So we're going to start from the top. We're going to create a brand new dashboard. We're going to work our way through the process. We've got some example things I want to go through. I want to show you some sort of little tips to how you can get the most of this. But as I say, any questions, any thoughts, anything you're wondering how you can make this work for your business, post it in the chat, post it in the Q&A, and we'll make sure we can cover that as well. So let's get started. So once we're in our dashboards view, we're going to go in and we're going to create our dashboard. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to call it demo for webinar, and we can then start adding our first components. So down the side here, we've got a list of all of the different options of things that we can add to our dashboard. Now, some of these are more complex than others, so we're going to start with some of the more basic ones, and then we're going to work our way through in terms of complexity to build out a pretty fully fledged dashboard that's going to give us a great overview of, in our case, the deals pipeline, but you can do it against any module or even multiple modules if you want to. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to see how many deals that we have created this month. So to do that, we're going to use a KPI indicator. So we're going to select the KPI indicator, and it's going to pop up and give us a preview of all of the different types of KPIs. In this instance, we just want to know how many deals we've created this month versus last month. So we're going to go for this basic one at the top, the standard option. And this is where we're going to start seeing kind of repeating patterns. A lot of how Zoho dashboards work is actually very similar to each other. So once you kind of master one element, you can pretty much apply that everywhere else you go. So I'm going to call that deals created this month. I've realized today is going to be a real test of how well I can type without looking at the keyboard. And we're going to select our KPI metric. So this is where we need to select the module that we're pulling the data from. And this is going to differ depending on what type of report you're doing. So in our case, we're looking at deals. Very simply, we want to see deals created this month. So we know we're going to be pulling from the deals module. It might be, though, if you wanted to do it based on how many leads you've created this month, instead you would select the leads module. Now, we'll also talk about these related modules in a little while as well, because that gives you even more power. But for now, we're going to start simple, as I say, and build our way up. So by default, it's selected count of deals as what our KPI is. But you can see we've got other options as well in here. So we can do a sum of the amount. We can do minimum amount, maximum amount, average amount, etc. I won't read them all out. And we're going to go for counted deals. We're then going to choose our duration, and we're going to choose what field we're going to use to base this duration off of. So we're looking at how many deals have been created this month. So we're going to use the created time field, and that's a system field. So every record in Zoho always has a created time, so you don't need to worry about that one. If I wanted to do this KPI, say, on how many deals have closed this month or how many deals we're expecting to close this month, I may use closing time instead, or closing date instead. So we'll select created time, sorry. We'll choose our duration of this month. You'll see it's got a compare to previous period, so that's great. It's going to show us versus the previous period. And we've got an objective. So this is basically whether or not we're up or down on last month, whether to consider an increase a positive or a decrease a positive. And we're going to hit save. We'll come back to these options in just a moment. So straight away, we've got our first KPI there, and we can now see deals created this month, 297. So really, really simple. We've now got that bit of information. But we're looking massively up on last month, which is possibly a positive thing, but to me also indicates that maybe our dial is a little bit off. And I know why it's off, because I know if I look up at the date, we're only sitting at the 15th of August. So currently we're comparing the 1st to the 15th of August to the whole of July. So we've got a little bit of a weirdness going on there in terms of what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into edit, and we're just going to change this to previous period relative. And what that's going to do is, instead of comparing this month, or what we've had of this month, to the whole of last month, instead it's going to compare today to the first of the month to the same period of the previous month. So it gives us a little bit more flexibility. I'm going to hit done, and you'll see actually that's even more positive now. The reason for that is, as I know, I only started the automation for this probably the middle of last month. So no deals were created up until the middle of last month, hence why now we've got that 100% increase. So we actually look even better now that we look at the numbers. But that's a really important thing. I see people do this all the time. They build their KPI widgets and they just do versus previous period. And then the whole month, that KPI widget is highlighted red because it's down, because you're comparing part of a month to a whole month. So unless you've got like a massive spike in what you're doing, it's always going to look negative. Switching it into that previous period relative makes a real difference in terms of making sure you're actually doing a like for like comparison of the data. Now, likewise, if you're a seasonal business, so if you have peaks and troughs throughout the year based on the time of year, instead of doing it based on previous period or previous month, you can switch to same period last year or same period relative last year. And this can be really great. I work with a couple of clients that have they're really busy in the summer, quite quiet in the winter, or really busy in the winter, quite quiet in the summer. So doing month-on-month reports aren't always the most useful because they know some months are going to be up and down based on the previous month. Whereas looking at that year-on-year report actually gives them a much better understanding of where they're at versus where they were the previous year. So again, it's really helpful to know that these filters are there because so many people just overlook them. So we're going to stick with our relative now. We can also stick on the numbers to display as shorthand. So if I do that, you'll see what it looks like. It does 0.3K. I'll be honest, I never turn that on unless you're talking huge numbers. I find that looks more confusing than anything else. Filters we'll come back to in a little while because there's more we can do on that, but I just want to get started on some of the other more basic things first. So that's kind of how we do deals. We're going to very quickly do the same thing for leads, just to quickly run over it one more time. But this time we're going to kind of speed run it now that you know what we're doing. So we're going to create our KPI. We're going to select standard. We're going to do leads created this month. We're going to select our module as leads. We're going to do our duration from the created time and do this month. We're going to compare to previous period relative, and we're going to hit done. And there we go. So this month we have created 1,388 leads. So really simple. Now, if we want to, we can drag these around and resize them as well. You could also obviously do more. So like if I'm building this report dashboard for myself, I may have a couple more indicators on there. But obviously due to time today, I'm just going to do some of these just quickly, just so you can see what they look like. Now, this always, it catches me out, to be fair. So I just wanted to show this. If we hit save, it's going to say added successfully. If I hit save again, it's going to tell me there's a duplicate name. It's a weird Zohoism. I hope it's just a little bug they're going to work out. It's something I've noticed the last couple of weeks. When you first save your dashboard, you then need to cancel, and then you will see your dashboard here. If you try and save it again, Zoho is effectively trying to save it as an additional dashboard, and it gets a little bit confused. So just something to bear in mind because I've run into that a couple of times. Now, let's move on to some of the more sophisticated KPIs. So I'm going to hit add component now. So now we're in our main dashboard view. I'm going to hit add component. These are the same options we've seen before in that sidebar, but because now we've saved the dashboard, we just do it in a slightly different way. Ultimately, I actually prefer the interface when you're first creating the dashboard because I quite like having that sidebar and how easy it is to drag things along, but it all works. You all get the end result at the same. So we're going to go in and select KPIs again. And this time we're going to do our scorecard. This is one of my favorite KPI dashboard widgets. We use this all the time for all sorts of different clients. So we're going to select this, and this time we're going to do something a little bit more complicated. We're going to start looking at our lead sources. We want to know where our leads are coming from. So I'm going to do lead source this month versus last. I'm going to select my KPI. So this time I'm going to start from the leads module. And I'm going to do count of leads. That's absolutely fine. And I'm going to do my duration. And I'm going to go in, and again, I'm going to do created time this month. And I'm going to do versus previous period. And in fact, I'm going to do relative again. Now, when we scroll down, we've now got this new section. We've got this ranking section. So this is where I can now go in and choose how I want to group my records. So I'm going to look for the source field. So I'm going to select that here. And I want to see the top 10 sources. And I'm going to hit save. We'll come back to this one in a moment. And there we go. We can now see this month we have had 83 leads from advertisement, 83 from public relations, 81 from sales email and aliases. I don't know what, that's a very odd lead source. And 80 from employee referral. Again, this is all fake data, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think if you're getting 71 leads per month from Twitter, you are definitely doing something that I am not, and I want to know what that thing is. Likewise, a lot of leads from chat there as well. Again, you can see our comparisons are all 100% because I only started the comparison midway through last month. But if I just tweak this and I'll compare it to the whole month, there we go. We can now see a little bit more data. So we can now see actually we're down on some of these things versus last month. Now, one of the things that makes the CRM dashboards really powerful is any of this information that I'm interested in is, let's say, I want to know more about what's going on with all these Twitter leads. I can click on that bit of information and it will take me to a list of all of the leads that that's related to. And in fact, then I can click into those leads. And if I hold control, it will open it in a new tab. And I can then go in and I can see more about that lead. So really, really useful way to be able to dig into your data. And actually, this is one of the ways that the built-in Zoho dashboards within Zoho CRM is actually better than standalone Zoho Analytics, because Analytics, when you want to click into the data, it's actually a little bit clunky. This works so much nicer. It's just a really smooth process to do that. So we've done this by lead source. I always find lead source to be a really interesting one because a lot of people collect lead source data but don't necessarily report on it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do another one, but this time we're going to look at our deals created by information. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to add component, go into KPI, and we're going to go into our scorecard KPI. We're going to do deals created by, and we're going to go into the deals module. We're going to choose created time this month, and we're going to do versus previous period. We'll leave it as previous period this time. And we're going to rank by created by. Again, we're going to do top 10 and hit save. And there we can see our data coming through. In this case, as I said, you can only see me in there, but obviously if you had more users, you can start to see what's going on. And actually, one of the things I really like to do is one, we can clone these widgets, but then what I like to do is then do deals closed by and actually do exactly the same thing, apart from change it to the owner of the deal. And this is where we're going to use our filter here. And we're going to choose it to only be deals where the stage is 1. So what I've done there is I've taken all of our deals data from the deals module. I'm counting it, but then I'm filtering it based on that stage is 1. And then down here, I'm sorting by the deal owner. Instead of deal created by, it's the deal owner. I'm going to hit save, and that will show me the number of deals won. In this case, we haven't won any deals, but I tell you what we can do. If we just quickly go into another tab, let's go into here. Let's win a deal. Let's see which one we look good. These look like they're old deals. Yeah. Let's bring that in here. There we go. Maybe bring that one in as well. And then let's just give that a little refresh. You've got that little refresh button up here, so it refreshes the data. Sometimes it does take a moment or so to do that. What I might need to do is have a quick look to see. Let's just change that to this quarter because that might be an older deal. There we go. So you can now see we've got my closed deal come through. Now, something that can be quite useful here is actually now you can start seeing the comparison. So if you've got a sales team that are responsible for deal creation all the way up to close by, you can start to very quickly see the difference between who's great at creating deals versus who's great at closing deals and start to see that information. Now, these are probably the most basics reports we can do. I think it's probably time we start getting into some of the more complex stuff. Just whilst we do that, and to give me a second to have a quick drink, does anybody have any questions on stuff we've done so far? I also have an awful habit of looking that way because that's where I move the screen when I'm doing this. So I need to remember to look forward because that's where you guys actually are, I guess. No questions? Perfect. I must be explaining things flawlessly. I like to hear it. Okay, so moving on to the next couple of reports. So once again, we're going to go to that add component, and this time we're going to go up to the chart report. Now, we've got two options here. We can do quick create, which is where we create the chart directly here, or we can create a chart from a report, and that actually relates to that separate reports module we spoke about earlier. In our case, we're going to do the quick create. Most of the time you can do more or less the same thing through both of these. One of them just requires you to create the report first. There are a handful of instances where you might want to do the report first. If you're doing any kind of data manipulation, the reporting is sometimes a little bit more flexible than what you can do directly within the quick create screen. But we're going to go into quick create. This is going to look pretty similar to what we're used to. So we're going to build a report of open deals by lead source so we can start understanding where our deals are coming from. So we're going to do that. So open deals by lead source. Perfect. We're going to choose our modules. So we're going to choose deals. And then we're going to go down and start adding in our information. Now we need to add our grouping in here. So this is how we're going to group the data into our different columns. So effectively we need we need one group for this type of report because we need to group it by lead source. Now, if I type in source here, you're going to see we have campaign source, we have social lead ID. We don't have lead source. The reason for that is because we don't have a lead source field within the deals module. Our lead source is stored on the contact or on the lead. So this is where we're going to use this related modules. And what this does is it allows us to pull through data related to our main module that we select. And the way to think about this, if I go into my deal and open one of these up, on the side here, you have all of these related, or what Zoho calls a related list. Effectively, that is where you've got other data linking into the deal. You've also got your fields here where you're linking out of the deal. So we've got account name and contact name, etc. That's what these related modules are. So it's the related bits of information to the deal that's not necessarily stored directly on the deal. So it gives us a little bit of flexibility now in terms of what we do. So in our case, I know the way we've done this is we've converted the lead directly into a deal. So I'm going to go in and I'm actually going to use the leads, so the converted leads module. And what that is when we convert a lead and we select to create a deal, that lead, although we can't see that lead anymore, it still exists. It's still in the system. It's just hidden now because we've converted it into a contact and deal. But I can still select that. And what that then gives me the flexibility to do is to go into groupings and search for lead source. And there it is. So I can now select my lead source as a grouping. I can hit save. And there we go. I've now got my chart showing me the lead source for my deals. Now I'm just going to go in there. I want to make this a bit bigger. So I'm going to hit this three little dots and I'm going to go into reorder. And then I can go in and move this around. Going to drag that. Oh, I didn't want to go that big. Oh no. As you'll see, this interface needs a little bit of improvement. I think when you start getting complicated, sometimes it can be a bit jumpy. Although it's normally not this bad, to be fair. I think what's not helping is I'm doing it I've zoomed the screen in, so the interface is probably a bit big for the screen right now, so it's made it a little bit more clunky than it normally is. But we can now see our data. Now I think there's ways we can improve this, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit this report. And when I go into edit, I can go in and I want to display a component filter. So what I want to do here is I want to be able to filter this data by the stage so I can start understanding what stage my deals are at. So I'm going to go in, hit save. What that does is it gives me this little filter icon. And when I click that little filter icon, I can now filter this report by my different deal stages. So if I just want to see close one, I can hit apply. And there we go. I can now see closed one. So I can see actually no lead source is our best hope. Web research is number 2. So it just gives us that flexibility to dig into our data. We can actually select multiple here as well. So let's include negotiation and review because there's more things in there. Again, we can see none's the highest. I can see seminar partner is number 3. Again, fake data here, which is why it's a little bit odd. It does also highlight, and this happens quite regularly when I'm talking to clients, potentially new clients, it highlights we've got an issue here where we're adding lead to the system without a lead source. So this might indicate to me that actually we need to do a bit of work on the front end of the system when leads are coming in, because actually all leads should probably have a source. Even if it is that that lead organically got to the website, we want to know they came via our website via an organic search, because then we know where to advertise, where to put our marketing spend, what we need to optimize, what do we need to focus on. So that's something for me I'd be focusing on resolving. Now, right now we're showing count of deals. So let's say I want to change that to the amount. So I'm going to go in and change our measure, and I'm going to change that to sum. And I'm going to hit save, and that's going to change this report a little bit, because now all of a sudden it's showing us value. And just like all the other reports we've done, I can click into here at any point and I can see all of the deals that actually make up that data set. So it gives me loads of flexibility in terms of what's actually going on within the system. One of my favorite things of a part of Zoho reports. So we've now got this. Now we've got one more that I'm going to do, and then I want to get into some of the more advanced reports because we're kind of building up to there. Now I'm going to go into add component again, and I'm going to go into chart. We're going to go into quick create, and we're going to give it a name again. And let's say we're going to do it by lead source by closing lead source of, let's see, what should we do? What have I got on my example report here? Closed deals by value. So let's do closed deals by value by lead source. So what we want to be able to do here is we want to see how what amount of value is each of our lead sources actually closing for us. So again, I'm going to select my main module will be deals. My related module will be my leads again. I'm going to do a sum of the amounts. My grouping is again going to be lead source. And this time I'm going to add a filter. So again, I'm going to do my filter is stage is 1. And we're going to hit save. And we can now see where our closed lead source are. And again, this is quite useful to have next to each other, because you can start to then see, okay, well, you know, if I look at web research, I can see that's driven 10 million in lead sources in total deal value, but it's only driven 600 odd thousand in terms of one value. But if I look at something like online store, that's driven 11 million in open deals, but actually none of them have been closed. So it might be that actually, do you know what, we're getting a load of traffic from this source, but for whatever reason, we're not doing a very good job at converting it. So maybe we're capturing the wrong people, maybe our front end marketing isn't quite right and we're telling the wrong message, or maybe something as part of our sales pipeline isn't quite right, and actually we're putting those leads off for whatever reason, or we're not closing them in the way that we should. So it starts to tell you a bit of a story about what's happening within your deals. Now we're just going to tidy this up a little bit. So I'm going to go into reorder here again. Just going to make these the same size because that makes everyone happier. I'm also going to go into edit here, and I'm going to go into this hidden little more options. I hate that that little more options is there because it's so easy to miss. But when you click there, you get a couple of options in here that are really helpful. The main one is that we can sort by, and I can sort by value descending. So that's going to give me a nice little curved graph here so I can see things a little bit clearer. And I can also put, say, a target in there as well. So let's say I want my target to be, I don't know, 500,000. I can hit that. And that's going to give me a benchmark line as well, which I can see then. This is quite handy if you want to be able to see, if you're doing sort of like quarterly targets and you've got a fixed target across the year, this is a really quick way to be able to add like a target line to a report. We'll just do the same thing over here just to make them nice and match up. So we're going to go in, we're going to sort by, and we're not going to worry about a target line there. Oh, hang on, make sure I select the right option. Don't want it sorted by labels, I want it sorted by value descending. There we go. So we can now see that, and we can start seeing the difference here, which is quite nice. And again, it makes it even clearer that advertisement here, we've got 12 million open deals, but actually we've got none that have closed from advertisement. So it might be something we're not quite doing right here. Now, I'm just going to clone this report for a moment so we don't have to start from scratch. Now, up in the top right hand corner, and this is another thing that, again, when you know it's there, it's really obvious, but people miss it all the time. Zoho actually does loads of different chart types, but for whatever reason, it defaults to the bar chart and it kind of hides the rest. Sorry, column chart. Bar chart, totally different in this context, apparently. I'm not sure why. you can go in and you can see all of the different chart options that Zoho have. Some of the chart options require you to have 2 levels of grouping, but some of them work as they are. But when you hover over it, it'll sort of give you an idea of where you're at. So for example, if I do the funnel chart, this is really helpful if I want to see my leads in stages. So I'm going to take out this bit here because I don't need that related module anymore. I'm going to do my grouping is going to be by the deal stage. I'm going to take that sort off because I don't need it, and I'm going to save. Oh, and I'm going to get rid of that filter down there because we don't need that. We're going to hit save. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us a nice report giving us an overview of our pipeline. So again, just a really, really quick one. Just allows us to see what is happening within our pipeline. Again, we'll just battle with a slightly clunky scroll in here. So we can see we have 51 million in qualification. We have 47 million in needs analysis, 27 million in value proposition. I tell you what, this is a business is doing incredibly well, isn't it? With its 51 million in its in just the qualification stage, let alone anywhere else. And close one there, and is that was that 2 million? Yeah, 2,593,000. But very quickly, you can start to see how the value is distributed across the pipeline really, really quickly. Of course, I can edit this as well. And if I want to, instead of having it be sum of amount, I can take it and do just like the count. So I can see the count of how many deals are in each stage. So I've got 163 deals in qualification, 135 in needs analysis, 83 in value proposition. So again, really, really quick to be able to bring this all together and be able to see a great overview of what's happening within your system. We'll just do a couple more of these just to show some of the other functions. We're going to end up with loads of dash clones here because I'm trying to avoid typing without looking. You can see we've got some other charts in here. So you've got a donut chart, you've got pie charts, all of that kind of thing. One of my favorite ones is actually the heat chart, and I'm going to show you an example of the heat chart. So I'm going to add some groupings here. I'm going to do created time. I'm going to do created time by day. Where is it? Day? Yeah, is it by day? We'll check in a minute. Sometimes we'll work it out as we go along. And then we're going to do again by created time. And when this time we're going to do created time by month. And we're going to change that then to a heat map. And we're going to hit save. We'll see how this comes out. Okay, so what this is going to do is, let's just make it a bit bigger because it's going to make it a little bit easier to see. Let's just move that up here and make this full width. So what the heat chart allows you to do is kind of see an overall of your data, and it highlights where there's kind of hotspots of data. Let's just change this a little bit just because it's a little bit big right now. Let's change that from day to day in month. I think that'll work better. Okay, here we go. So I can see on the first day of August we had 14 deals. On the second day we had 50. Oh, sorry, we had 15. Then we had 21. Then we had 9, etc. And it allows me to really quickly see an overview of all of that data in this nice heat chart. It's just one of those views I really like. One of the ones I do quite a lot actually, and some people hate this, some people love this, is if you've got a sales team that has monthly targets, quarterly targets, or anything like that, a heat map can be really, really interesting to plot out when, say, deals are being closed, deals are being created, and start to see that versus the target. Because what we quite often see with a lot of clients is the last week of the month or the last week of the quarter, that heat map suddenly is a lot hotter because everybody's trying to get their deals in before the end of the month. So it's really interesting to be able to highlight those things. The other one that I've seen a lot is when we do heat maps based on when notes are created in the system. Quite often we see Friday afternoon, a lot of notes are created because people have basically had all their meetings all week, and then Friday afternoon they've sat down and they've put them all into the system, as they should have done when they were doing the meeting. But they do it all on a Friday afternoon. So it helps to highlight how users are using the system. But it just goes to show all of the different options you've got in here in terms of different ways of sort of viewing your data. I mean, we could change this entirely if we wanted to, and we could put in lead. Let's put in our related module here and add in leads again. And let's do this by lead source. and by created month. And what that will do is that should show us an interesting view then of our lead source performance per month. So there we go. So I can see in August, our advertisements have done really well. But actually, if I look back in July, I can see actually external referrals were performing better. So a really useful way, as I say, to be able to visualize your data. So let's move on to some of the other report types because there's a lot of options we've got on there. Let's just clean this up a little bit because we want to make sure it's nice and presentable for the end of our session today. So I'm just going to slide this over. It's going to come a little bit crunched. Slide that one over and then we'll just have a massive sales funnel there. I mean, we may as well just make it one bigger, hadn't we? There we go. All works together quite nicely now. So we're going to go into add component, and now we're going to start looking at some of the more powerful components of there. So charts and KPIs, they're kind of the original components, is what Zoho had initially when they launched the dashboards feature. Since then, they've added all of these other options in here. So now we're going to get onto some of the more advanced ones. So we're going to talk about the comparators next. Now, this one is a sales team's favorite report. It's so good for being able to highlight your KPIs across your sales team. So we can see here is a great example actually. So the way these reports work is you have your different columns of usually either people or years or months, some sort of grouping. And then you have your rows for your different KPIs that you want to see against that grouping. So you'll see here we've got the KPI of lead created, revenue generated, amount lost, and average sales cycle. And we've got that then for each of our salespeople. This is like, it's the report that I build and people are the most, they always love this report. So let's build one together so you know how to do it. So we're going to go in and give it a name. We're going to do sales team performance. Hopefully I've done that one before. We're going to choose how to compare. So this is what those different columns are going to be. We're going to choose users and we're going to choose our users we want. We've only got 2 users in this system because it's just a test system. So there's me and Kirsty, my wife. I'm Jake Harris. I'm not entirely sure why, but it's just always been that way in our test system. So I've not spent the time to try and solve it because it's a test system. Okay, so let's start off and we want to see how many leads each of us have created. So the parameter's name is going to be leads created. I'm going to go into metrics and I'm going to choose leads and I'm going to do count of leads. The comparison is going to be based on lead owner. Now I'm actually going to change that because I want to see leads created. So instead of it being leads owner, which is what it defaults to, I'm going to change it to created by because that's how I want to see it. Because if I created a lead and then assigned it over to Kirsty, I still want the credit for creating that lead. I'm also going to add a time frame. In this point, I'm going to do created time and we'll do this month. We can also add our trend up and down, and that's when we do our usual comparisons. Hit done. And for now, I'm going to save and then we'll add some more in. So straight away, you can see our columns in here. So leads created this month. I've done 1,388, so I've been very busy. Kirsty has done 0, so definitely need to do some work there. And you can see that split into the columns. Now, that's pretty basic, so let's get adding in some of the other things in here. So next, I'm going to go into leads converted. So I'm going to add parameter. And I'm going to go into leads converted. The metric is going to be leads. And we don't need any related information, although what we can do actually that works quite nicely sometimes to do converted is we could actually do... no, we'll leave that empty actually. So we're going to go in and do leads converted, add the filter this time, and we're going to search for converted date time. Or we can do whatever we want the filter to do. So is converted, we're going to say is selected because we want only to include the leads that have converted in this particular KPI. This time we are going to do it based on the lead owner. And again, we're going to do the created time is this month. Now we might want to extend this particularly for the converted because it might be that actually we've converted leads from last month. The other way we can do it is actually base it on the converted time as well. So we've got some flexibility. So I can see converted time this month, and that'll actually probably work a bit better. Again, I can do my trend up and down, hit done, hit save, and then we're going to see that in there. So And straight away, it's making this really obvious. So I can see this month I've created 1,388 leads. I've converted 297, and I can see I'm actually up 92.9% this month. So I'm having a great month. That's what happens when you automate the entire lead generation with fake leads. Not to give any ideas to sales teams. So the next thing that I'm going to be KPI'd on is my notes I've created against my leads. So let's say that I have got a rule where my sales team have to create X number of notes per month. Maybe, in fact, one of the things I do with quite a few clients is we've got this system. Here's a little bonus tip for you. We've got this system that when they create notes, if they give it a title of an MSI and then add a note, we actually can pull just those MSI notes into a report. An MSI, if you're not in the sales world, is normally stands for meaningful sales interaction. So it's not just that you've had a phone call with somebody, you've had a meaningful conversation with somebody. And actually, this is one way you can start pulling that data in. So we can have both notes created, but also MSI notes created. And that's a really, really useful one to be able to see what's going on in terms of your notes created. I'm just having a look at our questions here. So is the converted in the sense of converted to a deal? Good question. So when I was setting up that one there, that question's from Rob, by the way. When you're creating your filters here, the is converted just means that it's been converted to it's been converted in some way. It doesn't necessarily mean a deal's been created. It just means it's been converted into a contact ultimately. They could also have converted it into a deal. However, I'll show you in just a moment, there is a way where we can also look at, in fact, I'll do it now, where I'll show you how we can bring through if a deal was created, because they are slightly different metrics. And what you may find, and I've found this with some clients, is you see a load of leads being created, a load of leads being converted, but then actually not many deals created. And loads of things get lost in that kind of gap between the lead process and the deal process. So actually it's a really big hotspot to focus on to make sure things aren't dropped off. So let's have a quick look at that one. I'm just going to take a sidetrack for a minute so we can answer this question. So we're going to change this to deals created. So to do that, we're now going to go into our deals module. We're going to go into here. We don't actually need anything in there. We don't need any related module. We're going to do count of deals, and we're going to do created time is this month. And again, we'll do trend up and down, hit save, hit save. So you can see here, although I've converted 297 leads this month, I've actually only created 96 deals. So there is a little bit of there's actually a fair bit of a difference there in terms of what's happening. Now, the way I quite like to set up systems when I'm working with clients is actually a lead being converted should pretty much always create a deal, or that lead should be linked to an existing deal. Because at the point you're converting them, for me, is because you're entering into a real sales conversation, so they should be in the deals process. This is kind of worst case scenario in a way where we've lost like 200 odd leads into the contacts module, and we now don't have we don't have anything we're doing with them. So good question there. In the best case scenario, I guess you may actually see deals created is higher than leads converted, because of course deals created would also include potential repeat business and things like that as well. So in a great world, we might be looking at say 350 here because we've got a deal for every one of those leads, plus we've then got some repeat business and things like that. Hopefully that answers your question, Rob. If anyone else has questions or any thoughts around how they can apply this to their own reports or their own business, please do pop them into the chat and the Q&A, and I'll try and pick them up and make sure we answer them. Okay, perfect. So let's go back in and do our notes. So we're going to go into edit. We're going to add notes created, or I'm going to call it lead notes created. My metric is going to be on the leads module. And then this is the time I'm going to use my related module, and I'm going to search for notes. And that's because when I'm looking at my leads, I know the notes are linked to the leads. They sit in that little notes section below. So I'm going to do notes. And then this time, instead of it being a count of leads, I'm going to do count of notes. And I'm going to do my comparison based on the note owner, because I want to know who created the note. In fact, I could do created by note instead. I'm going to do created time of the note. And then I'm going to do my comparison this month. Oh, yeah, trend up and down. Turn all of that on, hit done, hit save. And again, you can see that. So I can see this month I've made 403 lead notes compared to my 2.7 last month. And again, if I wanted to take it one step further, I can then go in and I can see my MSI lead notes. And again, I'm going to do the same thing for leads. I'm going to select my related module is notes. I'm going to do a count of notes. Where is it? Count of notes. There is. And this time I'm going to add a filter and I'm going to do title. So the note title is MSI. I'm going to base that on the note created by. I'm going to do it based on the note created time. You can see once you get into the rhythm of this, it's actually really quick to set this up. And hit done and hit save. And we'll probably see 0. Oh no, in fact, I've got 45. And as with everything else, I can click onto it and I can see the details. Again, that's the super powerful part of all of this, is any data that you see that you're interested in, you can click on the record and you can click straight through. So straight away, we can now see our performance. We can see Kirsty is doing awfully this month compared to me. I probably won't raise that at home, but we can see that I am outperforming everybody, which is great. Now, there are a couple of limitations with this report, and I hope Zoho changes this in the future because it's so powerful. You can only have 5 of these comparison metrics or these KPIs per one of these reports, and you can only have 5 columns of users. So if you have 6 salespeople, you can't have it all in the same report. That said, the easy workaround, and I've done this for a couple of clients, is we effectively duplicate the report, and the second report we either show the different users or we show the different KPIs. And that's an easy way to get around that limitation. But definitely one of my favorites, and actually quite often this is sitting at the top of the screen for me. Now, I'm going to take a slight tangent a moment before we build the next report, because I want to show you one of the things you can do with these reports, which I think is really powerful. So with any of these reports, we can go in and we can add them to home. And what that will do is if I now go back to my home screen, you will see I've now got my report embedded on the home screen. In fact, on the home screen, I can reorder this and I can bring this up. I can make it bigger. I can make it smaller. I can just move it around. And then there we go. And it's just there then when you log in front of you. And again, which is great, when you're on here, you can still click through. So I use this all the time. So if we're working with like sales managers or even marketing managers or anybody that's managing a team, this is great. You can set up the homepage to include these KPI indicators. So as soon as you log into the CRM, you can see clear KPIs of what your team's doing. And obviously we've done a couple of examples here of leads created, converted, and things like that. But those KPIs can be team specific. So if you've got niche KPIs around, you need to have a note with a certain title, or you need to have a certain field ticked, or you're moving between certain stages, all of that is possible in what you're doing with these reports because they are fully customizable. So it's really powerful. Okay, so let's just have a quick time check. So we have 40 minutes left. So let's kind of power through the last couple, and then we'll go through some questions and some sort of tips of other things that you can do as well. So next one I want to show you is just an alternate on the comparison. So we're going to add components. We're going to have a look at comparator, and you'll see you've got a couple of other layout options as well. Some of these work better for different types of data. This top one is obviously designed really to be used with your sales team or with your individual users. This second one really is meant to be year-based, and this one here, they're actually doing it city. But all of these can be customized. So if I go into the classic one, I can still go in and actually, instead of comparing among the city, I can do users, or even I can pick a specific specific drop down. So it might be that I want to do it by industry, for example. So I can pull through my lead industry. Lead industry. I'm going to group related values into categories. Oh, I don't actually need to. I'm just going to select the values I want to include. So let's include a couple of these. Again, you can see you can only include 5, so it's that same limitation we would have to clone the report. And again, I'm going to do leads created, count of leads, created time. We'll just do this quickly so we can show you some other things as well. Trend up and down, hit save. And now you can see that in there. So you can see for your different industries how your leads have come through. And industry is a great example actually, because industry is a really common way that particularly our clients tend to group the way they're doing things from a marketing perspective. So it might be less user based and more industry based, and you can have exactly kind of thing we've done here. So how many leads have we created for this industry? How many have we converted? How many deals have been created for this industry? How many deals have been closed won for this industry? And again, you get that same kind of KPI overview, but it works better for different types of teams. I tend to use this top one more for sales teams. This bottom one tends to work better for like marketing teams. But obviously, all of them can be interchanged and used in any place within the system. So next one we want to do is now getting into some of the fun ones. So in components, we have this anomaly detector. Now, this is, I say relatively new. It's probably been around for maybe 2 years now, so it's not that new, but it's one of those ones that I don't see many people using. So what the anomaly detector is it's a report that uses a little bit of AI, although I guess this was released before AI was quite the brand it was now. I think now they do brand it as Zia AI, but that kind of technology. And what it's doing is it's looking at patterns for when your data, your leads being created, and then it's going to alert you if for whatever reason something happens that's out of the ordinary, obviously within a threshold. So let's say you do this on leads, and actually leads is a great example. So I had an example, we set this up for a client. So we could see on average they were getting, I don't know, 10 leads per day. And all of a sudden they had 3 days with no leads. And the anomaly detector sent us an email to say, hey, you've had no leads, this is unusual. We actually found out their website was having an issue and the form data wasn't getting through. Um, Now, ultimately, you'd hoping to catch that from a website point of view, but in this case, Zoho saved us because we didn't notice that. Because when you're just working through things normally, you might not see that, particularly when it's spread out across a whole team. So it just gives you a great overview of what's going on. So I'm going to do this into created time. I'm going to do this by this year. The frequency is going to be weekly. If I do it by this month, I could do frequency of daily. Consider an increase of positive. Hit save. Now, when we create this report, it's going to take a little while because effectively the Zia AI or Zia AI, I'm never sure how to say it, is going to process the data to work out what is normal versus what is not normal. Hopefully this will load up by the end of our session, but if not, I've actually built it on a different dashboard already so you can see what that looks like, just to give you an example. Ah, there we go. It's actually already done it just as I was resizing our dashboards. Hit save there. So there we go. You can see here are our daily lead counts. You can see this is our trend down below. And up here is where I can click to subscribe and I can get emails if something is abnormal. Hit subscribe, and then if it notices something abnormal, it's going to let me know. Now, because I've got an automation running that is doing this, actually the numbers are pretty similar each day because of the fact that actually it's just an automation that's creating like 100 odd a day. But in your system, you might see things go up and down a little bit more. Okay, so next one, and this is another real favorite of sales teams, is we're going to look at the funnel. So the funnel is a great report that allows us to see conversion rate across the system. This is really, really powerful, this one. You can see already in the preview, we've got a real good preview here of leads created, leads converted, deals won, and then our overall conversion rate here. This is another one, along with those the sales team KPI sort of dashboard. This is another one I'm doing all the time at the moment for sales teams, because actually this kind of report is sometimes the first time you know your percentage conversion rate right the way from lead all the way up to deal one. So it's a really, really powerful report. I tend to use this top template up here because I quite like the visuals of it. There are some slightly different ones down below, so some more text-based ones and this kind of like pyramid-y one down here. I tend to prefer the top one, but they all work in pretty similar ways. So we're going to create our component and we're going to call it lead to deal. Some people call this like prospect to cash or something like that, depending on what you want to do. We're going to add our stage one, which is going to be lead created. And we're going to put in the leads module. So we're getting pretty used to this now, aren't we? We're going to put in the duration is based on the created time. And let's do it this year. Hit done. We're then going to do our second stage, and this is going to be do lead converted. And we're going to do converted to a contact. And we don't have to we can do containing and we can add filters here. So if we wanted to, we could exclude certain conversions if we wanted to. In our case, we're going to keep it simple and just do our converted. I'm going to hit save at this point just to show you a preview of what this looks like. So we can see this year we've had 4,833 leads. 5% of those have converted, and we've got 240 sitting here. I'm then going to go into edit again. I'm going to add stage, and I'm going to add in deal created. And we might see a little bit of weirdness with data now potentially, but we'll find out. This is where sometimes when I'm doing stuff via kind of cheating, I guess, where we're automating the system, sometimes some of the relationships go a little bit funny, but let's see. So we've got deal created, and what I did there was give it a name of deal created, and I've said it relates to a deal. Let's see how that looks. Hoping that's going to pull through. Absolutely, there we go. So we've got 488 or 4,833 leads, 5% conversion rate to lead created, 100% conversion rate to deal created. We're then going to go in again. I'm going to add the additional stage of deal 1. And we're going to do containing. We can search. Oh, sorry, we're not going to do containing. We're going to do criteria search. And we're going to do stage is 1. In fact, we could even, if we wanted to, add a stage in between if we wanted to. So like a lot of clients will have like an intermediary stage of like the contract's signed, but we're awaiting payment or something like that, depending on how your system's set up. In our case, we're going to go straight to 1, hit save. And there we go. I can now see, and I'd be intrigued how many people in this webinar would be able to tell me this for their business. I can see for my test system this year, our lead to close one conversion rate, I can tell you is 0% or so small it's been rounded up, but effectively all of those are related in 2-1 deals. So we're looking pretty poor in terms of our conversion rate. But obviously in a real system, this will probably look a little bit better. I'm just reading a comment now. So this is from Leo. Could the system create a funnel for deal stages? Yes, absolutely. So Leo, it's as if you read my mind and you're doing my segues for me, which is brilliant. So we've got this particular report here. This report here, this funnel report is kind of designed to look at the whole system overall. But actually, we can also do this within the deal and just look at stages as well. We'll do that next. Just before I move on, one other feature we can do here is we can add this classified by, and I can add in lead source. And what that does is it adds an extra element to our report where I can see overall at the top our conversion rate, but below I can see our conversion rate by source. And again, this is so powerful to understand, especially when you're doing paid advertising, what paid advertising is actually making a return. So many companies I work with and so many people I talk to, when you first start the conversation, they're measuring the results of their marketing on how many leads come into the system. But actually, you need to be making sure you're taking into account how many deals come out at the end. If you do a LinkedIn ad and it gives you 1,000 leads, that's great. But if none of them turn into a sale, was it worth it? And a report like this gives you that information. Because it has the conversion rate as well, particularly if you break this down further, it also makes it really easy to be able to identify drop-offs and bottlenecks within the system. So if you can see actually we're converting loads of leads, loads of people are coming to deal, but actually our quote, we've got this 50% drop-off for whatever reason. Is it because we're not quite pricing quite right? Is it because we're giving something to clients that they don't quite expect? And that's the thing I can't really get across, I guess, in today's session, because it's really more around building the reports. But actually, so much of this is back to business process and about understanding and applying data from these reports, not just building them. But anyway, let's answer Leo's question. So now we've got our lead to deal pipeline. We're now going to go into add component, and we're going to go in and we are going to add in our stages. There it is, our stages chart. So stages a little bit different to funnel. So as I say, funnel is showing you data across the entire system. Stages is showing you data within a module. So again, for stages, we've got a couple of different options for the type of report that we want. We've got some more visual ones and we've got some more sort of reporty chart type ones. I tend to quite like this middle one because it gives you an idea of how many deals have been sitting around. So we'll do this one here. So when we create our chart, we're going to give it a name. So I'm going to call it deal stages conversion rate. We're going to select our module. And you'll see for this one, we don't get the same flexibility as some of the other reports because this only works with modules where we're tracking the stage history. So in our system, that is only for deals. Okay, so we're going to select deals here. We're going to do duration and we're going to do this year again. Oh, sorry, we're going to do created time is this year. We can display as shorthand if we want. We can also apply a filter. So again, like any other filter we do, the reason you might want to filter here is if you've got multiple sales pipelines. So one client I work with has sort of like a consumer side of the business and a commercial side of the business. And actually the stages and the percentages for those different sides of the business will be very different. So that might be one of the reasons you would filter this, is because you just want to look at one pipeline over another pipeline. In our case, we'll keep it all the same. It's going to ask us to select our close won, close loss stages, but because I'm using a built-in module, it's pre-selected that for us. And it's also going to ask us to enter what the average days a deal should sit in each stage should be. And this is there for the stalled element of this report. So for now, I'm going to put in 10 days as an example. If I wanted to, I can actually switch this to individual stages. So if you know different stages within the deal have different time frames, you can change it so the average time for each stage is different. But for now, I'm just going to keep it as 10 to keep it simple. I'm then going to hit save. And straight away, this is going to create a really, really powerful report. So I'm just going to make it a bit bigger for everybody's benefit. So let's do that. And let's make it a bit taller as well. Oh, might have made it a little bit too tall now. Let's just make it one shorter. There we go. Okay, so what this is showing us then is it's showing us our qualification stage up the top here. It's showing us in the sort of most turquoisey color the amount that's moved. The blue is moved with a delay. The 125 sort of light blue here is waiting. They're still within that 10-day period. And these 38 are deals that are sat in qualification that haven't moved within that 10 days that we said it should take. So they're effectively 38 problematic deals. I can see overall our conversion rate between stage 1 and stage 2 is 64%. And as I go down the funnel, you can see that percentage changes ever so slightly. I can see overall my win rate once something becomes a deal is 1% because I've only won 7 deals so far. Again, the numbers here are a bit skewed because you can see we've got a huge number of deals at the early stages and we've only got very few that are closed won. Obviously, if we were doing this in your system, I suspect we would see a much, much healthier win rate in there than 1%. Now, again, what's great is I can obviously click into the numbers here. Oh, it's not playing ball for a moment, but then I can dig into the data as you'd expect. Now, if you want a simpler version of this, because sometimes people find the whole stall thing a little bit more complicated than they need, we can also do the standard funnel, and this takes away that confusing extra bit. And I'm going to do this as well because this again is really, really powerful. I'm going to do created time is this year. Keep that all the same. Hit save. There we go. So this is a slightly more straightforward version because it doesn't have that waiting time element to it. We're just going to make it a bit bigger so you can see it again. Oh, let's just find that. There we go. Oh, we've made it huge. What we're learning here, the hardest part of Zoho reporting is making just changing the sizes. So again, we can see here, there's our number of deals from qualification that have converted here. We've got 64%, 53%, 47%, etc. Now, I haven't got any closed lost deals here, but if I go in and just lose a couple of deals a minute, there we go, pop those in there. What you'll see is you'll then see the drop-off rate for each stage. Just bottom up on the one in there. Perfect. So if I now go back to my report and just refresh, what you'll see is you can now see the negotiation and review. You can see 7 have gone to close 1, 2 have gone to loss. So that means from negotiation and review, we lose 16%, we've won 58%, and the remaining percentage is still sat within the stage. So again, this is a really great report to start with because your system's already tracking the data. So it's as simple as just going into the dashboard. Even if you create a dashboard with just this report, you can go into the components, add the report, and very quickly you can see that conversion rate. And again, like a pro tip here is if we go into edit, I can display a component filter, and I could say put in the deal owner as a component filter. I might also add in lead source. Oh, I can't add lead source to this one, sorry, just because we don't have it on there. But if I do deal owner, I can go into filter, and I can then filter by deal owner. So if I'm having a one-to-one with one of the sales team and I want to understand their metrics, well, I can filter this report to understand actually how are you performing. And this actually can be really powerful because what you might see is certain people on your sales team might have much better conversion rates at different stages compared to somebody else. And then obviously that opens the conversation then towards mentoring that person on the sales team to make them better at that. Or potentially, even if you're a larger sales team, having the sales team specialize. So you might have one person that's really, really good at closing a deal. So they become the closer and they work on all of your deals, closing the deal. Whereas you might have somebody else that's really, really good at getting meetings booked. So you'll have that person in a kind of setter role to set up those meetings. So it just helps us highlight what's actually happening in your system. And a lot of the time, especially when I talk to business owners, a lot of business owners kind of know this data sort of intuitively, but they don't have the numbers or they don't have the sort of concrete evidence of it. And this is really, really powerful. Sometimes you also get where you have a suspicion of something and you look at the data and actually realize it's not true. And again, that's where the data can be really powerful, is making sure the decisions you're making are backed by what's actually happening in reality, not just kind of your feelings on what's happening, I guess. How are we for time? So we're 10 past 3. So let me just have a quick look on my example dashboard to see if there's anything else we've missed out that I want to include. So I think we've covered a lot of the main things. Now you'll see there are some other reports in here that we've not looked at very much today. So obviously we've spoken about charts, KPIs, comparators, anomaly detectors, funnels, and stages. There's a handful in here that we've not done. So like target meter, for example. Target meter is pretty much the same as the KPI, apart from the fact you set a target. This can be quite nice if you're wanting to see targets for your sales team and things like that. Or these dials at the top can be quite nice as well. I quite often use the coloured one actually if we're looking at doing like a sales target for the year. As you move out through the year, you want to see that slowly moving into the green. You set these up very, very similar to everything else that we've done. So let's do a sales target. We're going to set the target for, we can do particular users or we can do the entire organization. We're going to do it for deals. We don't need to select a related module. We're going to do it sum of amount. The duration is going to be based on created time and this year. I'm going to say our target is 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million. You can adjust the green and the yellow zones here. Hit save. And that's going to give us our KPI. In our case, we're massively over that, which is good news. It's quite a nice little tool to be able to do that. And as I say, if you get into doing the individual user targets as well, that can be quite powerful. So this is where I might go into here, set targets for users. Again, I can select my users and then I can set targets for each individual user. So again, really nice way to be able to see an overall of what's actually happening within the system. Something that has been a bit of a trend the last couple of years is when I first started working with clients in Zoho, 7-8 years ago, we would pretty much always ignore the built-in CRM analytics because they were so limited. They just couldn't do the types of things clients needed. So we'd always sort of get clients into Zoho Analytics, the more powerful application. The last 2 years, that's really, really changed actually. In fact, one of the clients I visited a client yesterday that I've been working with since 2019. I think I said earlier. And back when I initially worked with them, we set them up a load of reports and analytics that were really great. Obviously, as the business has evolved, what we found ourselves doing is actually moving a lot of that stuff now into the CRM. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is because you can click into the data really easily. The other thing is the fact you can easily add it onto your homepage. But the other big, big benefit with Zoho CRM reporting is it's so much easier to use than analytics. The Zoho Analytics report, yes, may be more powerful, but with that comes complexity. And actually, most teams don't want more complexity. They want more simplicity. They want things to just work. And that's where Zoho CRM reports are really, really good. So you can see here, if I'm going to do a sales target per person. So again, I'll choose where that target is coming from. So I'm going to go into deals and do sum of amount again. Do duration is based on created time and this year. And then I can do individual targets for each salesperson. So mine might be that. Kirsty's might be, I don't know, maybe hers is double. Hit save. And then we can see that data there once again, doing much better. So that's one of the other reports we've got in there. A couple of these other ones, again, are quite powerful, but they become a little bit more niche, a little bit more bespoke in terms of where you would use them. So quadrants, for example, is a way of being able to plot data onto a chart based on your multiple parameters. Quite often I find myself preferring to use charts over this, but you've certainly got that option there. You've also got within your components, you've got the cohorts and zone analysis. Again, these are kind of heat map type things. There are use cases for these, but for the most part, I tend to find myself not really using them in all honesty. And I tend to find myself using the other things that we've already discussed a little bit more. Let me just run through and see if there's anything else we need to cover today. So one of the things we've not spoken about right now is this dashboard that I've built is entirely owned by me. No one else has access to this right now. Obviously, though, if you're a sales manager or sales director, you might want to include your sales team with this. So to do this, up at the top, we can go into edit and you can choose to share with. By default, it is always only ever shared with you, but you can go in and share it with all users. If you do that, I'd recommend hitting this lock this dashboard. What that means is, although all users have access to it, you're the only one that can edit it. And likewise, if you do custom users where you choose specific users, again, I would just make sure that's checked just so only you are the one that's editing it. Of course, unless you want other people editing it. We've already spoken about adding these reports to your home screen. So if we want to go down here and add in our, getting stuck on the thing there. If we want to add this to our home screen, we can click onto it and we can add to home screen. And then that will then show up on our home screen. Of course, we can rearrange it and everything else like that from here. We'll do that now. This is the tip that I really recommend doing actually, because what I find is sometimes we build these dashboards, particularly when we're working with clients, we may build them this dashboard. It's got everything they want on there, but naturally times get busy and you forget to check your own dashboard. Having it on a homepage is great because you're kind of confronted with it every day as a reminder. Unfortunately, whether the numbers are good or bad, but it's right there. You haven't got to go looking for it. It's right there in the CRM, so you can start making use of it. Really, really useful. Go back into our analytics again. Any of these you click on, you have noticed you've got quite a couple of options in here. So obviously you've got your clone, your edit, your delete. You can print it. I don't know how many people are printing a KPI from CRM, but you've sure got the option. You can embed or add to the homepage. You can also get an embed URL. So if you want to use this on a different place within, well, potentially Zoho, but potentially even outside of Zoho, this URL will allow you to embed it there. If you're a customer that uses something like, if you have like an intranet where you've got like your own kind of system, you could include these dashboards within that system. And potentially, if you've got any kind of system where you're showing certain things on a screen in an office, again, you could use that embed link to be able to help show it there. So a useful little feature built in there. You can move your reports to another dashboard. You can download a copy of your report. You can download it as like a PDF or an Excel. The Excel is quite nice because it gives you like the raw data, so you can then actually manipulate it further if you wanted to. You can add it to your favorite, which is always helpful, or you can go in and you can share via Microsoft Teams. To do that last bit, you need to have already connected up Microsoft Teams, but it's quite nice if you have done, because then when you send it, you actually see the report within the Teams interface, which is quite nice. Finally, last couple of things on here. Obviously, you can add dashboard filters. So all of the times we've looked at these filters before, we've done it on a report level. You can also do it on a whole dashboard level. So let's say we want to filter the whole dashboard by lead source. I can add that as a dashboard filter, and it sits right at the top of my dashboard. And I can go in and I can say, okay, I want to filter this whole dashboard by advertisement leads. And I'll apply and it will update. Anything with a triangle means that the data in that report doesn't link to that source, so is why it won't filter. But anything else you can see has been filtered automatically. This is actually quite new. Up until, in fact, today is the first day I've noticed it. Up until recently, you haven't been able to add a filter unless all reports could be filtered by it. So that's a nice little increase in flexibility you've got there. You've also got your clone, your reorder, view in full screen, delete. Final one is to create a presentation. This takes a moment for it to run. In fact, you'll get a notification when it's done. But this is perfect for them being able to share this on a TV screen or something like that as well, if you want to share it within the office. Now, I just want to close up, I think, probably showing you one more report that I did for a client this week, actually, that is really, really useful. And it's actually something you've only been able to do recently, but I think I'm going to be doing it in more places. But before I share that, has anyone got any questions or anything, any thoughts on anything so far? Just reading through to see if we've got any more questions. How did you automate the population of autonomous data or anonymous data to the leads module? That's a question from Rob. You can tell Rob is another Zoho consultant because that is a very Zoho consultant question. Good question though, Rob. So there is a service, I can't think of what it's called. It's when you search for like random data generator. It's that service that comes up. It begins with M. I can't think of it now. They have an API, random data generator. You can see I can't type. This is the service. So this service here has an API. So what I'm doing is I've set up a schedule that calls the API for this service, and it just generates random data each day, pumps it into the system. And then there's also a schedule then that looks at the data that's already in the system and just randomly creates notes, creates deals, converts deals, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really helpful actually because I set it up for this, but it's really helpful for doing other demos as well within the sandbox, within the test system. You can see our presentation is ready now, but you can obviously look at that when you want to. Okay, so I'll just leave the comments for a moment whilst I do one final report that I think is really powerful. So I'm going to create a new dashboard just so it's a bit cleaner. And I'm going to call this deal drop-off dashboard. I'm going to create a new report in here, and we're going to go in and create a chart. We're going to do a quick chart. We're going to do deal movements. And this is going to make sense as we go through it. It's going to sound a little bit complicated at first, I suspect. So we're going to use our module of deals. And we're going to select the related module. And we're going to select the stage history related module. Now, this is a module that's built into Zoho. It may or may not be turned off on your system, just depending on how you've set up your system. But what it does is within a deal, every time that deal changes stage, effectively it's stamping the data. It's stamping the time in which that stage changed, the value of the deal at that stage, and a load of other information. But what that means is we can actually take that and use that history within our reports. So I'm going to go into here and I'm going to change this to sum of amount. In fact, I'm going to do it to sum of amount from the stage history module. I'm going to group by stage. I'm going to group it by stage of the stage history module. There we go. And I think that's all I need for now. I'm going to hit done. Okay, so that's going to give me this report here. I'm then going to go in and I'm just going to add, oh, just close that now because we've saved it. I'm then going to go in and I'm going to go into edit and I'm going to add a filter on here. I'm going to display component filter. And I'm going to add in modified time, but modified time within the stage history report. And this is really key. So I'm going to add that in and hit save. I'm then going to go into that filter and I'm going to say this week. I'm going to hit apply. So what that's doing, and because this is a test system, it doesn't show you it in the best way. This worked really nicely for a client, but I just wanted to show you it anyway because it's really powerful. So what this is doing is this is showing us how much value or how much value for deals has moved into each stage this week. What this means is I can now see, okay, this week we've actually lost £500,000 and I can click into that and I can see those 2 closed lost deals that have come in this week, and I can click in and I can see exactly what the detail is there. Now, what's really nice about this is so often when I talk to sales teams is they can see that things are happening, they can see that things are changing within the system, but they don't necessarily know what's changing. They can see, great, the pipeline's getting bigger, but why is it getting bigger? What's happening on a weekly or a monthly basis? And this report shows you exactly that. Now, where this is great is you can take this a step further, and I can add an additional filter in here. I'm going to do that on the modified by user, but again within the stage history, and hit save. What that's going to allow me to do now is I can now filter by just me and just today. And what that's going to do is it's going to show me what I've done in the system today. So I can see today I've moved £2 million worth of deals into proposal/price quote. I've moved 3 million into value proposition, but I've lost 500k. I've won 500k. But it shows you what's happening within the system. Where this is really useful is it allows you to see the drop off that's happening. So if you look at your close loss column in your CRM, there's probably quite a lot of deals in it. Just the nature of sales is you're going to lose a certain percentage of them. But actually tracking how that movement is happening is really, really important. The other thing that I think is really interesting here is quite often what you see is you might notice that if I filter by Kirsty, this is going to be like empty. And this is what we were noticing with some of our clients is actually certain sales team members weren't moving things forward, or they weren't moving things forward at the same velocity. So you might have one salesperson that's moved £2 million worth of sales forward this week, but another salesperson's only done 200k. There might be completely valid reasons for that. One of them might be a senior sales manager, the other one might be like a newbie. This is their first job in sales, but it's really difficult to see that movement normally in the CRM. And this is a report specifically that I find really, really useful, really powerful to understand what is actually happening within the deal system. And because you've got these filters, it's just so flexible as well. So I can see this whole quarter. What has Jake done this quarter? Apply. There we go. That's what I've done this quarter. I've moved £97 million worth of deals into stage 2. As you can imagine, if you're doing this in your own CRM, you'd probably see really, really interesting data here because it'll probably be a lot less cleaner funnel than this because of the realities of sales. I think that is pretty much everything on my list of dashboards today. Now, we haven't got into reporting. There's obviously a lot in reporting. A lot of the stuff we've spoken about dashboards apply to reporting in terms of related modules and things like that. But I think we probably need to have a session separately at some point to go through reporting because I wouldn't want to rush through it. But does anyone have any questions on dashboards, or do you have thoughts on what you'd like to see next? I know cadences, so the automatic emailing features within the CRM, I know that came up as quite popular when I asked last time. So that's currently at the top of my list, is to do a webinar on cadences. What's everyone else's preference? You guys are actually sitting here, so I feel like you get the benefit. Yes, absolutely. I see someone's asking for the recording. I will absolutely share the recording. So what I'll do is after this, I will actually trim up the recording from this session, send it over to everybody that's in the webinar, and then you can share that link with anybody else that needs. I appreciate we covered a lot very quickly, so I'm sure it'd be beneficial to be able to look some of this back. But yeah, perfect. Any other questions? Oh, thanks, Rob. That's very kind. He says, great webinar. It was good to do a webinar. I was due to do a webinar 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately we had, I say a little bit of a flood. We had a burst water mains that completely flooded our downstairs. So it's been slightly chaotic in our life for the last couple of weeks, but it's nice to get back to normal and do the webinar. And I really enjoy doing these ones. So, oh, thank you, everybody. Oh, you're all very kind. Perfect. Thank you. Well, I tell you what then, I'll hang around for the next sort of few minutes if anyone's got any questions to answer them. But otherwise, I think we've probably covered everything we need to today. I'll send the recording out probably in the next hour or so, and I will let you know of our next webinar. In fact, actually, we do have another webinar in 2 weeks. So at the end of the month, we do a webinar covering all the latest updates into Zoho. So it's a little bit less focused than this session because we cover sort of a mixture based on what Zoho's released, some new features and things like that. That's coming up at 2 weeks. I believe when you leave the webinar, you'll actually be taken to the sign up page for that next one. So you've got no excuse to miss it. But yeah, any questions, I'll hang around and I'll also make sure I email the recording over to everyone. But thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate it's quite a long thing to do on a Wednesday afternoon.